the reality though, right, is that I am 44 years old. I have been publishing books since I was like 27, right? And every book I've written is about prison. And when you come into a space and you make people laugh, they love it, right? But then you read poems and it's all about prison. I would tell stories in between, and then they would laugh at the stories, and I would go back to the poems. And they would like the poems, but then they would leave oftentimes without buying the book. And I learned something though. People take that sorrow in measures, right? And I didn't understand it. But even when you listen to the description of my books about prison, the books are never just about prison. But when people talk about it, they just imagine that it's just this horror story. And it's not just a horror story. And I realize that when I get to read from the books, but the truth is that there is something to be said about how every story anchors itself in something. And the wild thing I realized writing this book, not writing the book, what I realized writing the book is I won't stop. One of my friends, Lori, was like, you can stop revising it. I'm gonna read the last poem I revised. It's like maybe one of the 27 best poems in the book. But the beautiful thing about this one, and then I'll stop reading because and then I'll start reading. But the beautiful thing about this book that I only learned once it was published is you write a book about prison. It's called Felon. It only shows up in conversations about prison. And you will mess around and believe that that's the only thing we have to talk about, even if that's not the only thing we talk about. In my very first book of poems, that was called He Read His Own Poem, I had a poem about finding 40 clothings. So it's like I've always been perseverating and thinking about the same set of circumstances in various ways, right? And so this book comes out and it gets like talked about as a nature book, talked about as a religious book. Somebody made a mistake. And it gets talked about as a book of love poem. It's kind of beautiful to imagine that one book contains so many different things. So after I set myself up by telling you how good the book is, I will start reading. Will she think this makes me good? Oh, the other thing, unlike any book I've ever read, I pride myself on saying that a poet's job is to embody every body he needs to embody. So I say I contain multitudes like Walt Whitman. That literally means the pronoun I contains multitude. So if you pick up most of my books and you see the pronoun I, it doesn't necessarily refer to me. Because sometimes the stories that need to be told aren't the stories that come out of my life. So that means sometimes I've written books that have the first person speaker in a poem doing something that's horrendous. It's kind of the price of doing business to be a poet. You got to be willing to embody the things that we'll have to confront. You have to be, for me, I have to be willing to do it without trying to say that this happens outside of myself. Led to some hard things because people assume that I did a lot of things that I didn't do because I wrote poems. Like I ended Felon with a poem where somebody confesses basically to raping somebody. And I had people tell me, yo, so brave of you to admit to raping somebody. What are you talking about? One, that is not brave. And two, that's not my admission. But it was my duty to write the poem because I was trying to figure something out for myself that had nothing to do with the world. Actually, just figuring out something about me and my family and things that my folks went through, right? But this book is all about me, though, which is weird because I usually tell people, don't think the I is me. But fuck it. This I, every I is me. So if you want to pick up the book, you could be like, yo, that happened. And you'd be like, did that really happen? So I'm going to start with this one because it's a true story, even though it might sound like it's not. Will she think this makes me good? There is a road that stretches from one part of town to another. And one morning, walking that asphalt away from or toward my troubles, I saw a barking dog ready to cross traffic. And forget what I thought as I mad dashed into the rush of caffeinated sedans yelling, no, no, stop, hold up, stop, stop. Outstretched arms as if desires matter when confronting some disasters. As if anyone's desires matter faced with cars just barely beyond screeching. And this dog close enough to know that she would kill us both if she ran toward me as if I were her savior. My life had just become a tender thing in this quiet, dark-eyed animal's small jaws. No longer barking, astonished at what she had to know was not my sacrifice, but my need to tumble into this unforgiving life, hoping to save one living thing other than myself. I never tell people of all the times I've done nothing, failed to answer the call or pour something into the starving cup asking for change. or run backwards towards the danger. Though I once admitted to knowing twice being scared should have mattered less. The second time when T stopped eating, the sobbing dog behind me sounded too much like any abused animal to be ignored even by me, who ate cantaloupe covered by a different dead animal and couldn't hear the abuse for desire not to witness one more broken thing. And such is this life, where not looking then now has made a friend of this no longer rattled small dog named, later learning from the man who belongs to him, pork pie, after the hat Jasmine wore, as they invented new ways to wonder, would his woman think this makes good? I love this one actually. So it's a place called Happy Homes. It's a dog place out in Woodbridge. And this poem comes out of experiences with my dog Taylor going to Happy Homes. So when it says Happy Homes, it's talking about one of those like dog sitters, where all of the dogs come and hang out together. Of all this, and it all reminds me of the small dog that walks with me, mostly barking, and of the days I drive her to Happy Homes, where she bored and riot with the local cacophony. And it reminds me of how, as we pull up, before the car full stop, she'd be on two paws, full leaning her mouth against the glass, and she shouted her joy. And maybe I shouldn't be surprised when she bounds from my car and barely pauses before launching herself and me toward the green door from behind which those would become her pack wait. But I am always surprised and astonished too, that she can leap into my arms and leap away and have entirely no clue how sometimes we want, in a way that's familiar from one continent to another, to the fowl and wind and flowers, and even the gravel that people carrying a stone in their heart walked on. That feeling for a moment, for at least a second, if that, to just fucking how. I was in Italy, right? And they got these, they like love history, right? And it's old country that makes you, remember that this country can disappear, you know what I mean? And no, and literally because because the sculptures that we was looking at is a fresco, and a fresco is like a painting that's on stone, and they have removed the frescoes from the church that got bombed during like, World War I or something like that, and they put it on another wall, and I'm standing in front of it, and I'm hearing this story. And it's a story about St. Julian. Now, I don't know who knows who St. Julian is. So St. Julian is this. Now I carjacked somebody when I was 16 and have lived most of my life knowing that I will never be forgiven in this country, knowing that there are always going to be jobs that I can't get. There will always be people who tell me that they would like me more if I don't say the word prison. If I somehow could erase the fact that I've gone to prison, if I wrote different books about different things. And so things like this have haunted me. And I'm in this museum. I'm standing in front of the sculpture, and the dude tells the story. He says, St. Julian, it was prophesied that he would kill his parents. I was like, you should distrust that prophet. Stag warned him. And he moved away, because who wants to kill their parents? But prophecies are going to be fulfilled. So his parents went to see him because they loved him, and he was in the field work. And his wife said, man, y'all came all this way to see us. Take the bed, relax. And she went out to the back to pick flowers or something for dinner. And he came home and he saw them in the bed, but they was covered because they was tired. And I guess back then they covered themselves up in blankets. And he saw two bodies and they just seemed to be electric or something. And so he got the bat and he beat the two bodies to death. And then he figured, let me see my parents for the last time. I mean, let me see my wife and her lover. Who is this? And he removes the blanket and his parents. And he's so distraught that he walks and walks and walks and walks and walks. And then he ends up like setting up like a hospital or something on a riverbank. And he becomes the patron saint of pilgrims. How do you become a saint and the Catholic religion and the stories that you killed your parents. And I can't get a job at McDonald's. And I was watching and listening to the story and weeping. And right then I wrote this poem. Apologia to the Stag. After Piero della Francesca's fresco of St. Julian. Because maybe there was no stag, and the only curse was anger. Blame desire to desecrate, destroy, turn from prayer. What if Julian knew, as we all know, when we test disaster and venture toward the last leg, some lonely cherubim pulling us back, except we don't breathe and instead shatter our histories? What if there were no stag and only the pause after, where escaping yesterday becomes folly and recovery demands a mention? Shahid has lived in cities of men who know what it means to fail to turn away. A man can walk until all his steps become sorrow. And maybe others will name it pilgrimage. And over 2 fingers of rum, maybe they'll tell this story of the stag whose warning was ignored. And they will never say it was a collie or hound or small terrier that barked no, because then we know the lie. Warning. Know that a dog would leap before a blade to save the last bit of goodness we have. And so it is a stag we hear of instead of the horror of a man who should have paused. Haven't we all been that man? Imagining we might have listened if the voice warning was more eloquent or a bark, or at least the stag we wish warned him. They say the woman who took his hand knew him better than the blood that covered them. And years later, no one will say she was wrong, even then, knowing that when they left that disaster, he was hoping to assemble what he'd broken, the very best way he knew. All right, now I'm gonna read something that's different, because why not? Oh, I should read this one. You know what? I am gonna read this one. But I'm gonna read these 2 back to back. And there's some love poems in here too, because yeah. We never say goodbye. The silence of the night grieves, and this ain't the lonely of leaves raining onto a dark road after midnight. And so one of us digresses us to a village in a country where we've never held hands, where men transform silkworm cocoons into silk threads into quilts. The entire process alchemic. Frayed remnants of a butterfly's past becoming a quiet where lovers disappear at night. Shahid knows that there is no disappearing prison. What do any of us deserve? What do any of us deserve? I close my eyes, touch a tooth mark beneath my heart. Penitentiary cells nearly became my tomb. I duck contretemps and miss chains. What might I deserve? After some seasons with this longing, feeling like heroin, you breathing here and now twice, tears on your lips. Oh, this is fly right here, but you know it's weird when you say your own poem is fly, because but I'm gonna tell you why it's fly. Because it ain't really fly because the poem is good, although I think the poem is good. The thing that a poet always tries to do is figure out, like, how can you riff on history in a way that says that you were part of it. So Ezra Pound, who was also a fascist. But you know, sometimes, and maybe I had forgot he was a fascist when I stole his title for his poem. But he wrote this poem called In a Station of the Metro. And it's like this beautiful, like 3-line poem, right? And I was like, I'm gonna steal his poem and I'm gonna steal his little title and make it mine. So it's called In a Station of the Metro. The subtitle in parentheses is Don't You Remember? Now, it's a pantun. A pantun is like a poem that has lines that repeat, you know. In a station of the metro, don't you remember? Been running, now buoyant. This heart still a cauldron. Love's truant, my voice hushed. Tell me the God to pardon. My heart still, A cauldron on a train headed for trouble. Tell me to God the party. This falling ain't never been subtle. On a train headed for trouble, a red ballad song on my mind. This falling ain't never been subtle. You remember our first time. A red ballad song on my mind that night, Luther's voice. You remember that one time? Running. Now, boy.
That's a fly poem.
Thank
That is.
you,
It's
thank you.
so, it is.
I'm gonna read something that's a little bit actually I lost 60 pounds. I like saying that because I spent a lot of time looking at myself in the mirror and wondering, you know, the parts of me that I remembered that had disappeared.
Mm.
And then I went through something and I started biking a lot. And the biking just like I stopped drinking. Not fully, but mostly. And the weight just started dripping off me as if like I was carrying. And I wrote a poem once called Whiskey for Breakfast. And I said, a gallon of whiskey weighs 8 pounds. And I am river. And then when I got to this poem, I wanted to be more than river. When I got to this book, when I got to this part of my life, I wanted to be something different. So I stopped drinking, and then it was almost like it was true. Weight started dropping as if the whiskey was what was like, you know, I was carrying. And I wrote this poem called Losing Weight because this is, you know, I get the dog and we walking and the stopping, drinking and walking just, so losing weight. When I wanted to lose weight, when I started, it began with hunger, with needing to fill my body, asking for more of it all. Butter and salt and forgiveness for Hennessy cursing through these veins. Another tide ushering me back to all my prisons. It started with fear. Or not fear, but walking literally with what I'd feared. A dog with teeth that flared when threatened. Even if them vampire things wouldn't break my skin if I were another treat. We'd walk to the driveway's end, then more steps into the space past the yard felt safe. Until this Jack Russell Terrier that fit inside my palm as a pistol once did, let me slip all those memories. And yes, I began wanting the world as she did. Full gulps of his scent until my nose twitched like a conduit for what might be possible. And somehow more and more and more of me disappeared. During those moments with my loves, the puppy leading and the two lights illuminating my world. And maybe it's folly for a man to admit he is in love with a son, young enough to still believe his father's burdens will not touch him. And the oldest son who knows it doesn't matter. Because the only burden to worrying is never seeing your father weep. And now entire pieces of who I was have begun to fall from my body. Worries so much more as I become wildly as light as wind. As wind, my only burden is the sails I left behind. Did this thing where you know, every poem in this book I rate the people in the world. I rate the people 4 o'clock in the morning in Ubers. I rate the people at airports. I rate the people at the bus stop. I literally stopped yesterday. I was walking down the street past the Rep Theater, and this woman was beside me, and I was like, "Yo, I should read your poem." And she's like, and she let me read her poem, and I gave her my book, and she's like, "You wrote that?" You know, she was like, "Shh." Yeah. And I'm gonna read the one I wrote. I wrote her, but I'm gonna read Rings now. I wrote this at on a train. This beautiful woman was sitting across me, and she got divorced. And I got this thing where like everybody feels like somebody always wants something from them. And I was like, look, I got divorced too. And I know you're probably beautiful, and I'm not flirting with you at all. But look, I'm dope. I'm gonna write this poem for you because I like rings, and she had those cool rings, right? And listen, I ain't even gonna ask your name though. I ain't gonna ask your name or nothing. Just gonna write this poem. And I got on at Baltimore. She was getting off in New York. I was like, I'm bad. So I'm gonna finish before we get off in New York. In fact, I'm gonna finish in 12 minutes. I said, and I asked about the rings, and she started telling me about dogs, and that's why I said I'm gonna write your poem because somehow the rings ended up being a conversation about dogs, and she told me her dog's name, and I was like, I got you. Rings. Everyone needs a reason to remember, even if remembering brings about tears. Shaheed would tell you he knows the ugliest amongst us gets ignored. Remembers days he needed to be a rugged child that disappeared and still failed to vanish. Breaking bread with men who carry life sentences like cliches. So all these years later, isn't surprised the smiling woman mentions Theo, the mutt, half Chihuahua and half pup, so ugly that she is cute. What irony. The rescue as plain as a pike staff, puckery, no oil painting. Is named God's gift. This is how love brings you to tears. Some of us accumulate rings like dogs, each finger holding its own promise and history. Nugget, who takes permissions without asking, standing on a coffee table as if belonging. Like 5 rings on this woman's middle finger, as brave as anyone. The rings and coffee table saying, though she be small, she be mighty. Who adorns a single digit with the beautiful part of a brass knuckle? 2 empty fingers echo French bulldogs whose names I never learned. But this is how loss works. The losing itself is a naming, and every story becomes multiplication. If the naming is filled less with names than with the best parts, the barking and everything else. Because who amongst us hasn't been as mangy as a rescue, even on our best days, desiring mostly to be loved? I'm gonna read Mount Kilimanjaro. Climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. I should just say this poem doesn't have the word Shaheed in it, but when you hear the word Shaheed, it's because like when I was in prison, my name was Shaheed, and it's this poetic poem called a ghazal where you sign your name at the end. And I was thinking about how do you like, just like how do you do something that feels for me, but that the reader will make sense, and how do you invite people to have some mystery? And there are people who like have read a bunch of my poems, and so they'll know who Shaheed is, and some people won't, but I think the poems still work. And I should just say that so that when y'all hear Shaheed, I'm actually being self-referential in a way. Climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. When someone dies on a mountain, the terrain owns the body. Bones become ash and then landscape. Every lover I touched has become part of the geography of my soul. Sometimes everything is a metaphor for sex. This woman tells me you can't traverse the same path twice. And I ask her to name what this is. This woman who first saw me naked before head covered our pews, and now has seen the gray and trifling. A man who loves a woman who doesn't share his name. Tell me what ain't dangerous at 1 a.m. On a mountain, you don't look for guidance from Sirius, the North Star, or the galaxy of constellations. The bones on the ground, brittle of leaf, the roaming animals, silence of the large stones, all co-pilot. A weight to stumble you into needing rescue. Some people are always done, or rather finished, before the helicopter arrives. Some people are the helicopter. And again, I'm some fool laughing. There are mountains, and there is knowing that second, first time. One other Easter egg is in the book. In a way, you see these pictures in the cover. So when I was in solitary confinement, well, I started writing poetry in solitary confinement, and that's one of the reasons why I put Shaheed all through this, because Shaheed started writing poetry in solitary confinement when he was like a 17-year-old teenager. And I wrote all of these poems, and I was writing them. And these are poems I wrote as a kid. In fact, I'm gonna read one of these because it reminds me of like, and I was signing it though. I'm in prison signing my name on every poem, like I'm gonna fucking be somebody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
I was a fool.
You were right.
That's good.
But I'm gonna read this one because I read this one the other day and it's weird because I got all these names and Shaheed, Dwayne, Reginald. And this one I wrote, 1999, man, April 99. Reginald, a somewhat complicated man, prematurely set in his ways, decided at 16 to leave home, traveled many miles to get to prison and meet young men turn old flying backwards. Experience was a cold teacher, nurturing a rebelliousness that dared to wonder, dared to achieve. He left prison a couple years ago. I hear he's making out okay.
Mm.
Yo, I had a lot of time left when I wrote that, man. I wrote that in 1999. I came home on March 4th, 2005. You know, literally, I left 5 years after saying that. So when I be saying Shaheed reads his own poem, which was the title of my first book, I think it's because there's something to be said for the fact that we can tell our own futures. All right, so few more poems and I'll take some questions. Wow. Man, I like all of these poems.
That's good.
All right, I'm gonna read Daffodils, I'm gonna read Canary. I'm gonna read Daffodils and Cafe Sicaria, and then I'm gonna read one that I have no business reading. I'm gonna read it anyway. Daffodils. The beautiful story behind this, actually, I'm gonna tell y'all because why not, right? So last March 3rd, I'm with my girlfriend. We go see her granny 100, right? And I had a horrible incident a few weeks before that where I just went through something emotional. But one of the things that happened was during the read, and I kept telling people, if you say a word, I'm gonna read a poem from my new book. And so I told my girl how like stressed out I was and how like really depressed I was during this thing that happened, where I just felt like I had kind of hit rock bottom in a way, right? And she heard the whole story, and all she paid attention to was that I told people. I mean, she paid attention to all of it, but the thing that mattered most to her that she brought back up quickly, right, was that I'm in a room with her, me, her, and her granny. She said, "Oh, granny, yeah, my friend, if you say a word, he'll read your poem." And I'm thinking, that's what you got from that story, you know? And so her granny say, "Sweet Jesus." And I'm like, man, you know, because I'm part like heathen, right? But this is on a religious list, so it's only part heathen. You know, I'm more like Saint Julian, but I ain't never killed my parents.
Right.
Yes, that's not a funny joke. My mom is not gonna like that one. Oh. So what happens is I read the poem. She says, "Sweet Jesus." She says, "Good." So then, like 5 minutes later, she said, "Granny, you want another poem?" And Granny's blind, so when she said "Sweet Jesus," it's like this blind woman was looking at me, you know. So then she said, "You want another poem?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "What's the word?" She said, "Daffodil." I have no idea what a daffodil is. I get to meandering through a poem I'm making up on the spot, and I ain't never seen a woman get so disappointed so quickly. I mean, you ever see a blind woman close their eyes, you know? Yo. And I thought to myself, and I think my friend was like, you know what? Maybe it ain't that bad. It was like, "Granny, you want another poem?" "Nah, baby." Granny, okay. When she started talking about herself in the third person, I was like, man. So then we driving down south, and I see some daffodils on the side of the road, and it stays in my head. And I end up writing this poem. Daffodils. When every fancy is freedom, hunger becomes discovery. Hold me that way again. Your hand gripping one of the blades you love, my body all tremble and want. Sometimes surrender is the only gift. My hand returns to a space beneath my heart, and I feel that raucous ragtime moon song beating against my chest. Can you hear this when I'm hovering? That day riding down the stretch of highway that led to my prisons. The daffodils had no business blooming then, in that March 4th frost. In the same way we had no business becoming. But ain't nobody business if we do. And these yesterdays precede us. And I wonder, where won't you follow? So we chase down my past as if there is freedom in the cells I left behind. And you will tell me that inside I am in my element, which means I shimmer, as if a man can rise from a corpse and walk into the world. I was a corpse before you touched me, is what I'm thinking. As I resist asking you to pull over, stopping to pluck a half a dozen daffodils and thread the lot of them into your hair.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. He gave you a gift that day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He gave you a gift.
You walk into a prison with me too, and people don't really walk in prisons. And the thing is, if you love somebody that's in prison, you walk in and see them. If you love somebody that's been in prison, you don't return to a prison like that. And she walked into a prison like that. It was kind of cool. Lori was with me too. But she goes to prisons all the time. She can't get that kind of credit, you know what I mean? I'm just saying. Yeah. Cafe Sicaria. So it was some wild shit, right? I was in Italy, and I was stressed out and depressed, and so I just used to bike to town. And I was staying in the castle, but I just needed to leave the castle. So I was in the town so much that I had this two incidents. People would recognize me, you know, and they would like know me, and they'd be like, "Hey, Reginald," you know. And so I was at this cafe, man. I was on the phone with a friend, and she heard somebody call my name, and she was like, "This is unfathomable. How do you know people in Umbertide and they don't even speak English there, and you don't speak Italian?" And so this is the poem that came out of that. I should say, Simone, my first day there, we had got stranded, and Simone drove us back to the castle, like 5 miles. And then 3 days later, he came to my poetry reading. And it was beautiful because I had wrote a poem about that night and about how he drove us home. And I read it at the read, not knowing that he was there. And then like 5, 6 days later, I was in town and he rang up on me. Cafe Sicaria. Simone walks up to me and this place becomes another kind of home. How to admit this? In every city I love, I've been estranged. How to say I love how my walks here. How to say I love how on my walks here, I wait for Lassie, two of them, white and eager to bark as I pass their home. I have become someone who welcomes the loud bark of a dog that would have frightened me late into my 30s. Taz. Taz may be the same breed as the pair that says hello, and I know he is large enough to tumble me on the ground and play. And I'm still unafraid, even if I'd be surprised just as now. When an Italian who offered me a ride on a lonely night, when three of us with languages bridging colonialism were stranded in a strange city, calls out Reginald as he approaches this cafe. I've said it 4 consecutive days and realized in every place I've known I've collected names as souvenirs. Shaheed, Reggie, Young Music, Jojo Santana, all a way for people to do as Simone does now. Offer me welcome as a way to say kindness makes us no longer strangers. And then he offers to show me his city, where I will be a stranger still, but less so, because of friendship he extends to a man who has only now learned to weep.
Yeah. Yeah.
The last poem, I just say this one is called A Canzone, and it's a love poem I wrote for my woman. And it has a number of lines that repeat, like words that repeat at the end of lines. So blues, hair, scent, song, aisle, and aisle comes up as aisle, I comma LL, and also aisle is an ISLE. And then I think that's it. It's those 5 words to get. And here is here, HERE, and here it's an HEAR. And then blues, it's always blues, but it's blues meaning different things like the color, or blues as in the music. And then scent is SENT, as in sent you somewhere. It's sense, CENTS, and then it's scent, SCENT. And the idea is you want to create this rhythm by using familiar words and create some surprising juxtaposition. Do y'all know what a ballad song is? So this once led to a huge disaster. I'm glad I didn't bring a knife with me. And I wish I did because I could have showed you what it is. It's a trainer, it wouldn't have been a real knife. But a ballad song is a butterfly knife. And do y'all know what a butterfly knife is? No. So it's those knives that had like the 2 handles and then the blade here, and then you could flip it like this. And so that's why I wish I had it so I could show you could understand the metaphor. It's like this, and the thing I would have used again, it's not a real knife. It's a rubber knife, but a lot of people use it as like a sport basically, because you can do all of these tricks with it. And so you use a knife that you use a facsimile knife so that you don't cut yourself. But then when people compete in tournaments and stuff, they be using really sharp blades. And I'm only explaining this because the word ballad song is the title, but the first line is this knife's duet. It's the only love song, and it's only dance or something. But the knife's duet is how when you swing it, it's dancing, so Ballad song. This knife's duet is the only blues I listen for some days. The song I hear when the talent you pull turns blue against my skin's burnt umber. Prison blues, a geography of losses, but your scent, your skin is my way back when kind of blue. Imagine being a storm and with it blue. I'll suffer for this. Who don't need this song, so desperate for something, a song not tied to whatever? It's the blues of the prisons I've known. But I digress. I love you. Is that what I'm saying? This isle, once some fool's fantasy, now our isle, where man can traverse the blue vows of a song. Call out my name, and I'll keep you in this wretched mind of mine. I'll keep you in whatever place I call here, as in home. A teddy bear in your arms, I'll be the talons in your hands, be the owl. Touch yourself as if no one watches. Blues, my smile's now wind chimes in a storm. Blue, not this 4 a.m. shivering sky witnesses I'll be pitching early morning woo. This song is a knife against my flesh, the song of a man who hustled for this, the song of a man traversing barefoot on an aisle. Our mother's sorrows ain't our song. Your eyes, Kirkoscuro, is our song. And I admit to desiring it all. The blue of the softest place on earth, that song from you called with my tongue, the song of a dinghy pulled to shore, pulled here by the strength left in these arms. You hear me singing to you. My entire body, the song you call to being in this world. This scent unknown. Teach me to relax. Who sent Shahid to remember himself in the scent of a river? Solstice, tarragon, ballad song for a man whose life is a tightrope. You sent gifts of knives, 4-leaf clovers, the scent that comes when we turn the bed into an aisle. We found sea lions before a storm. You sent me a note with a secret. My 2 cents. You're free as a sharpened blade. You read blue clouds, the moon, dirt, gravel, and the blues of my sorrows turn this blade that I've sent you into a promise. The wild of the riverhead. For this, on any night, if we listen, we hear my heart become the rapids you adore. Here where you hold me with your thunder. Blues, this is all the song I need. This here is the kind of thing I welcome ruin for. Here, where ribs meet my chest. Nearby the song I crave. This ain't madness. I can hear how my heart becomes a song for you here when I am home, when I am yours. I'll be your thing. Meet you on an aisle. Home is wherever we become us. Here, we are whatever joy turns a nice blade blue. All of it. Every way these solstice blues gave us these blue flames. You salve my blues, making it easy like Sunday morning. Here, it's always a song. Say you love where they sent us. I keep saying song when I mean forever. I keep saying forever when I mean love. I'll. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you guys. You guys were such a cool audience, man. I really appreciate it. And now if y'all want to ask some questions, we got time for questions. And then I think they will appreciate if y'all buy books. I will too. But you know, frankly, I think that poetry is about being heard in the world. So if you don't buy a book, I appreciate you telling somebody you enjoyed it if you did. And I'll give you a postcard to remember what the cover looks like. So anyway, if y'all have questions, and anyway, whatever questions you have, feel free to ask about poetry, about life, about the world, about Freedom Reads, whatever. And then
So clearly you have trouble feeling. Joe, I'm wondering if writing poetry for you is not religious, but a way for you a way that you are able to really connect with your soul, because your poems are beautiful. They're clear, they're earthy, they're supernatural. They have a lot of levels. But I'm wondering that as a man, how has writing these poems affected you?
You know, the interesting thing, and that really is a good question in a lot of ways. And, you know, I had trouble feeling for a long time. You know, you go to prison at 16, and you got to be still. And if you ain't still and you ain't violent, then you got to be invisible. And if you talk too much and you can't be invisible, then you got to be good at making people love you. And I was 16 and I have always talked too much in this world. And I've never been good at violence. So I cried, you know, when I found out I would miss Christmas. And then the second time I cried when I was locked up, it was wild too, because I got the chance to write the afterword for Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail, which came out this year. And you know, and my name's on the front cover. And I am a convict, ex-convict at least, and I'm still a felon, but I'm a father too, and I'm a man, and I'm a citizen of this country, and I love everybody, really. And it's a real honor to be asked to do that because ain't nobody in this country predicting that King's family will let me do that.
Mm.
And the thing is though, the second time I cried in prison was my first MLK day in prison. Because I was listening to like, you know, black folks, white folks too, but just like in Letter from a Birmingham jail makes it a real point to like acknowledge that whatever people say about the struggle has never been black and white. That has always been a lie, you know, and I think King was really artful. He taking the time to point out that being black ain't give you no fucking secret knowledge of the civil rights struggle. You know what I mean? It is a weird way in which sometimes in this contemporary era, we act as if you haven't been to prison, you can't understand, or you can't be a part of it, or you can be a part of it, but only so much. And King is talking specifically about the brothers that he went into the front lines with, while he never names the 8 Christian, you know, ministers that he's actually responded to in the letter. Anyway, that was the second time I wept, and I didn't weep again for 8.5 years. And then I came home and wept once, and then weep again. Didn't weep when I got married. Didn't weep at the birth of either one of my sons. Didn't weep at a couple funerals I went to. Just didn't weep at all. And then I was in Italy, and I was on the stage and couldn't stop. And I think since then I've been more incapable of not feeling it all. But I learned something. I learned that in all of those years of not feeling anything, I also didn't feel joy. And my fear of sorrow kept me from joy, I think. And the wild thing is like poems are always smarter than you, man. I mean, I'm fucking 18 talking about Reginald stuck in his ways. Fuck that I know about being stuck in my ways, you know? But then, you know, then you fast forward now and, you know, it's like, you know, it's like I almost wrote it for myself. Because that line, you know, I hear he got out a few years ago. They say he making it out okay. As if I needed to hear this 25 years later. And so when you ask this, the poems give me a way to access something. The poems gave me a way to access something when I was a child that the world I was living in would not have allowed me to have and wear on my face. And as I've gotten older, I think because I've pursued the writing of these poems, I've tried to pursue the honesty of it all with a zealousness that I think I would like to believe that it makes me closer to whatever God I believe in. You know, I would like to believe that at least it makes me, you know, more distant from the things that make me feel like I'm disappearing. And I think that's one great power of poetry is to allow not just me to feel seen, but you know, the poems try to be complicated, they try to be complex. I mean, I call myself trifling in one of the poems, you know what I mean? The poems try to be as real as it is because it's the one place where I know I don't have to lie. You know, it's kind of cool.
That was a beautiful.
Thank you, sir.
First of all, I want to say I did get my 2 books. Okay, so one short. Okay.
Yeah.
But what was it? You know, when you were in prison, what was it that led you to the path that you were going to be on? Because by design, you know, we know what prisons can be designed for. Some of us grow up in certain situations, and by design, right? People think we're going to go one way, and yet we end up going another way. So what was it for you that you felt, you know, hey, you know what, I'm going to go out and, you know, I'm going to get my degree and then be a lawyer, and then, you know, what was it within you?
Well, I spent 8.5 years becoming that person though. And
so when you came out of prison,
but even before, because one of the things is you spent 8.5 years really thinking about who you're going to be. And I was collecting skills, and I learned, you know, prison was in some ways perfect for somebody like me who mind wanders everywhere. That, you know, to keep myself sane, you know, I would like learn new things and study different things. I learned how to type on a whim, mostly because I was typing up poems and I didn't want to get sent to solitary, but also because I was a GED tutor, and the teacher had a typewriter with a typing book. And I was like, oh, I can teach myself how to type with that, can I? She's like, yeah. So I learned how to type. I type like 150 words a minute. But now I probably type 100, 105, stuff like that. But I type enough that when I went to college, every time I had to do a paper, I could do it the last day because I could type fast. And so, but imagine if I didn't learn how to type in prison and I had to do this. So these are just skills. I didn't even know I would use this skill. I was in a sale with somebody once. Dude asked me, yo, if you go to McDonald's and you slip and fall, but they got one of those yellow signs up and you break your leg, can you sue? I said, yeah. Did I get hurt? Yeah, you broke your leg. I said, yeah, you can sue. He argues with me 45 minutes. Then he reaches under his bunk, grabs a book, yellow book. I still remember the color. Ugly yellow, right? Says torts on the spine. He flips to the page. See, you wrong. What's the problem with that? He argued with me for 45 minutes about a question he knew the answer to.
Right.
I was like, are you crazy? So you think that you just gonna bid off of me? So I'm your entertainment now. He had a magazine. And I was like, to prevent myself from doing violence, I'm not a violent person. I just like to talk sometimes. I grabbed his magazine. So I'm reading your magazine. Flip it open. I see a paralegal course. Blackstone Paralegal Studies. I say, you know what? I'm going to take this damn paralegal course and ain't nobody going to know more about the law than me. Have no intention of being a lawyer. Have no intention of going to law school. Have only intention of feeling good about myself and not being mad at this dude. And I accumulated still skill upon skill upon skill like that. And I taught myself Spanish and hablo español, pero yo tengo un vocabulario de un niño. Pero yo puedo explicar cómo aprender español en prisión. Porque un hombre no conozco decidió ayudarme cuando personas quieren pelearme por nada. And then I went into a cell afterwards, right? And him and his two homies, they all spoke Spanish. But he spoke Spanish to English. But I couldn't talk to the three of them because they didn't speak Spanish. So in my head, I said, I'm going to learn Spanish one day because I hate the fact that the dude don't even know me and help me. And I can't even talk to his two homies. 6 years later, I'm in a cell with this dude that's learning Spanish. And I look at him and I'm like, this dude is an idiot. And he's my man, though. I feel guilty for calling him an idiot because, like he was. And I was like, man, if you learn Spanish, I'm going to learn Spanish. He's like, what you trying to say? I was like, you just inspired me, bro. And so then I come home. I made my mom weep. It wasn't no conspiracy. I picked up a pistol, I carjacked somebody. I mean, that's just the reality of it. You know, I mean, I was smart. I graduated from I got locked up and was able to skip the 12th grade and graduate from high school before I got sentenced. My judge told me I'm under no illusion that sending me to prison will help, but you could get something out of it if you want. And everybody around me, the first thing somebody told me when they found out I was 16 was, yo, blame such and such. Make up a name and snitch on that person. Ain't no honor amongst criminals. And everybody I know in prison is guilty. It ain't no racism. I just got a phone call from a homie who got 50 years in prison and he just got denied parole again. And the reason why he always gets denied parole is because he killed somebody. And it ain't no nation of people in this country that believe that people committed murder like St. Julian deserve to be free. But it's a nation of people in this country that think prison is predicated on slavery, that think prison is predicated on racism. But when I was in prison, I was afraid of people who looked like me. And so like the reality is when I came home, I was going to be different because my mom deserved to be proud of her son and not ashamed of her son. And it wasn't nothing that was going to stop me from being different. And I'm just blessed that I had the accoutrements, the knowledge necessary to come out into the world and excel. You know, I had to work full time my entire life as a student. I did every paper I've ever written the day before it was due. And I could have done none of that if I hadn't read every book in prison before I got to school. If I hadn't trained myself to be able to type faster than everybody else, to think faster than everybody else, to be lucky, you know? And so, and all of that means that I don't have a real answer for how I made it happen because I can name a dozen people who were just as committed, desire just as much to be somebody in the world, and ain't make it. And we all get our share no's. And it ain't never on us really for how we keep going. It's on all of the people who prop us up when we ready to tumble. So, you know, I wish I had a better answer. But the real thing though is I built the organization to make sure that I could try to provide some of the things for those inside that I got for myself or didn't get. I once wrote a poem and said, it don't matter what I do when I go home. Because the people who need to see it most will never see it. Because don't nobody go back to prison. And I've been in more prisons. You know, I came home, but I would never return to a prison. Because all of this talk about social justice, it was going on when I was locked up. Ain't nobody go to prison. And they still don't go to prison. Still don't go to prison. And so I got lucky mostly. And I hope to use my good fortune to remind us all that, like, maybe we got a duty to do something, you know.
Can you speak a little bit about your project Freedom Reads and how it's also had functions or it's been a stimulus for your transformation and emotional?
Yeah, but see, even that though, I started Freedom Reads, which is an organization. I got a $5 million grant from the Mellon Foundation to build an organization that will build micro libraries. They made a hardwood, sit about 44 inches high. They're curved and they're beautiful in space. And it's 500 specially curated books. And the way it works is like, if it's here and it's curved here, you can see the books on both sides. So what, like 6 of us could browse at the same time, and it creates community. And you go into a prison where there is no locus point for community, for safety, like base when you play tag, there was no place. And if you're a reader, you read in your cell, but now you read in public. And so, you know, I couldn't get a job, and that's why I pushed this Freedom Reads. And I was fortunate again because somebody believed in me on spec. The most brilliant decision that those folks ever made. Oh yeah, I understand, right? You get somebody to believe in you. Somebody say, I'm gonna give you $5 million to make an idea come true. And then you do it. And then you go back to the people and say, you know what you did? I'm gonna give you 10 more million. And then it started with 3 people, and now we got a team of roughly 20. We started with, I didn't know what the Freedom Library would look like. I partnered with Mass Design, some architects. We partnered with some architects. We developed it. We developed what it would look like. We found the people who would build it. We worked with local folks in Connecticut, local folks in Hamden. Our team is mostly folks that live out here in Connecticut. And we have, at this point, Lori is my senior advisor. And I'm talking about Central. You know, if you go to our website, you'll see our impact report, which she wrote. You'll see our strategic plan, and you'll see like the work that we do, but you'll also see on our website the beauty of it. You'll see the joy. One of our #1 commitments is to bring joy, hope for the possibility of tomorrow to those inside, right? And so it has been fantastic, and it's been fantastic for a lot of reasons. I mean, I got people on my team who literally went in prison at 15, came home at 40, and Freedom Reads was their first job with a 401k, with health insurance, so that they not like me, free for 13, 14 years before you find out that you could get a therapist, before you got health insurance, before you figure out what a 401k plan is, right? I got people on my team did 30 years, came home, Freedom Reads was there first. And my man was like, it's not my job, it's my career. And what's really humbling is that, man, I ain't planning on doing none of this. Last time I had a job was 1990, was 2006 when I worked in a bookstore. And I loved working in a bookstore. And as a poet, you're a freelancer. You like a traveling priest or something. But to be a CEO of an organization and to work with a team of people and to work really closely with the Department of Corrections, it forced me to grow and stretch in ways that I wouldn't have believed. Like I have to forecasting. No, not the weather, financial forecasting. I was like, the person, my CFO was like, yo, we got to do forecasting. I was like, nah, we're not doing weather with this. You know, we're right inside. And so it's been remarkable because and it's taken me into more prison. It actually is giving people who love me an opportunity. My mama was like, hey, I went to the prison with you. How come you ain't never invite me? Are you serious? If I ain't invite you to prison, you know, it has literally reshaped the way my mama think about the institution. You know, when my whole team, all of us went to Montgomery to the Legacy Museum, and my mom with us, and it was cool to see my mom in real community with people who care about me, and it's a bunch of people dedicated to the work of going back inside prison. So, you know, in some real way, Freedom Reads has been a remarkable opportunity for me to become more of whoever I might be in the world. And it's been pretty cool, you know, also to be able to try to go back and do something meaningful. But it's been a real struggle too, because you go back and you go back and you go back. And one of the beefs is that you still fight with the ideas, like people think that prison exists for this reason, and we're not talking about why. Forget why prison exists. We're not talking about why people stay in prison. Why my homie, I mean, the parole board literally said you haven't served enough time. His charge carried 5 to 40. It happened when he was like 15. He had the most abusive childhood that one can ever name. He already did like 27 years. He ain't had a charge in like 10 years. how much time is enough? And when are we gonna not have a documentary about like how racism is pervasive and causes the criminal justice system to be what it is, and instead have a documentary on how our unwillingness to have mercy
Yes.
is what makes our system what it is, right? And Freedom Reads has taught me that, because what I know is the men and the women who have worked with us, who have done time in prison, every day what we talk about is how horrific, how meaningful it is to be able to do something to help make amends for the thing that happened before. And every month I'm talking to parole board members who act as if that's not the case. It is so perverse because St. Julian killed his parents. I mean, you cannot be religious. They be having Catholics on the parole board. I mean, you cannot be Christian and act this way. It is not like, it cannot comport with your religion, yo. It cannot comport with Catholicism. But it is the pervasive idea in this country that if you have committed an act of violence, you cannot be redeemed or forgiven if you broke enough to end up in prison for it.
Right.
Okay, I think we could listen to you all
Okay,
night.
let's get into one more question.
Okay,
Then we're gonna leave.
one more question. I'm sorry.
Actually, I don't know if I actually have a question. But if you'll indulge me, I'll just talk and I think a question will come out of it.
That's mostly what I ask people to do.
I'm kind of a pretend poet, and so when I come to poetry readings, the first few poems I get inspired and say, yeah, I'm gonna sit down and pull that stuff together and write a poem, and then as you read more and more, like, no, I can't do that. That's like, but anyway, I'm gonna buy a book. I might even buy 2, but 3, you're pushing it. I'm going 3. I don't know how to say this without it sounding weird or creepy, but I have this, there's a strange sense that even though I'm 20 years your senior, that our lives intersect in a couple of different ways of take too long to explain, and I don't even know, it's too complicated to even explain. But my wife here, she thinks she likes to fancy herself as an investigator. You know, some people may call it stalking, but we actually, our lives did intersect once. You were pre-COVID, a couple of years before COVID, I don't know exactly when, there was a pop-up young person entrepreneur pop-up store down.
I remember that in old line.
Down in Chester.
No, it was in Chester.
It was
Yeah,
in
but it's
Chester.
close.
Yeah, yeah.
My kid was selling bookmarks.
Yes,
Yeah,
her
so-
son was selling bookmarks.
We have
We were
these
right
things
next to you, my
Oh,
daughter,
wow.
she was selling photographs and things, and, you know, we chatted a little bit, and I said, that gentleman seems very interesting, and then, of course, my little investigator goes, starts looking up, and I'm just like mesmerized, right, and so, yeah, there's so many different things and ways that, I feel like there's this connection, and so, again, I don't know how to explain it.
But you know,
Maybe someday though, who knows, but I love what you're doing with Freedom Reads. I get your newsletter, and I know I'm forgetting some, but I know you want to get to the
Well,
book
I
selling
think that's a
anyway.
really nice way to end
Yeah.
it. That's
I,
a very
um,
nice way to end
But
it.
I want to, so the question, I guess the question that comes up is, I've been thinking about, is there a way that I could get involved and be more than just a donor to Freedom Reads and be involved in?
yeah, so I'll tell
projects?
this to everybody, and that is a really good way to end this, right? 2 things. So go to our website, you can email us, and my email is easy, Dwayne@freedomreads.org. But also you reach out to us and you can come to the space. And one of the things that we're working on this year, you heard of Habitat for Humanity. One of the ways in which we can scale up our project is it takes like 40 hours to build one bookcase all by hand. But we partner with a local organization called J Joiners, and they do all of the cutting with a giant CNC machine so that they cut the parts, and then we have a workshop where, you know, it's basic carpentry skills, not even I could do it, so anybody could do it. And you could put the bookcases together with us and build libraries. And that's one immediate way to get involved, because frankly, when you talk about scaling and when you talk about, you know, folks, sometimes we just need bodies to, and it also builds a community. And you could just come see the space. So that is one way. And then the other way is to tell people about it, but also to reach out and keep brainstorming about it, because I do feel like Freedom Reads is in this Connecticut community in the same way I am. And I try to live in it fully, which is why I'm delighted to see people that I know and then to see somebody that remembers me, because I try to make it a point to talk to people, to live in the community. And I think that I'm glad you spoke, because this reminds me that my whole time here. I mean, I've tried to be the same person. I talk to my neighbors. I am friendly with people, and I don't make it. I try not to make assumptions. I just wrote a piece about it in the New York Times Magazine. I mean, I almost got arrested 2 days before my birthday, and I fought hard not to make assumptions about the person who was responsible for that. And me and homie ain't friends, but we colleagues. Like if I text him right now and say, "Yo, something's wrong with my bike. Can I bring it by?" He would be like, "Yo, I'm not here tomorrow, but I'm here the next day. Come by at 2." And that's something that wouldn't have happened if I would have let myself get arrested that day by responding in a way that probably would have been reasonable. You know, my anger might have been reasonable given the situation. So you remind me again that it's much more powerful to be kind to somebody, even when you don't,
Right.
know why.
I read that essay.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very